We all know about Nike, but do you know the story behind this multi-billion-dollar company? It all started with Phil Knight, but his journey to make Nike a top company was far from easy. He faced betrayal, shady dealings in Japan, competitors that used the government in an attempt to bankrupt him, and horrifying, dark controversy, all to keep Nike from slipping under. But we'll get to that later. For now, let's rewind to the beginning. Phil Knight woke up from a bad dream, feeling a bit lost in life. His college years introduced him to Coach Bill Bowerman, a famous track coach, and they became good friends. Little did they realize that this friendship would eventually lead to the creation of the biggest sports company in the world. After college in 1959, Phil felt a bit confused about his direction. He had dreams of being an athlete, but things didn't pan out. Even a stint in the Army didn't give him the answers he was looking for. It wasn't until 1962 at Stanford that he came up with a business idea: import Japanese running shoes to challenge the popular German ones. So, after graduating, Phil took his business idea with him as he traveled the world and ended up in Japan. Despite facing setbacks, he found a brand called Tiger in Kobe and struck a deal to bring their shoes to the US, starting with some samples. But months passed and the promised shoe samples didn't show up. Phil worried he was getting scammed, but eventually the samples arrived, and with Coach Bowerman's approval, they became business partners, started Blue Ribbon Sports, and ordered more shoes from Japan. Now, the challenge was finding stores to sell the shoes. Phil had to sell them himself, going to track meets and running clubs. With hard work and belief in the product, they sold out 300 pairs in 3 months. His belief in the product made selling easy. Blue Ribbon Sports sold $8,000 worth of shoes in the first year. They ordered more shoes, hired sales reps, and opened their store. Coach Bowerman improved shoe designs, and they were on a roll. But little did they know, trouble was brewing with Onitsuka, their Japanese partners. Phil aimed to make Blue Ribbon Sports the exclusive distributor for Tiger shoes all over America, not just the West. Onitsuka hesitated, thinking Phil's company wasn't big enough. Quick on his feet, Phil claimed they had offices on the East Coast, impressing Onitsuka. They agreed, and Phil ordered 20,000 more pairs. To fund non-existent offices, he tried to get people to invest in Blue Ribbon Sports, but nobody responded except for the parents of an employee. Onitsuka became slow in delivering shoes, and their sneaky priority for Japanese customers frustrated Phil. Bowerman's suggestions were ignored, and in a meeting with an Onitsuka representative, Onitsuka said they were disappointed by Blue Ribbon sales. Phil realized Onitsuka was planning to replace Blue Ribbon. The Japanese gave Phil an ultimatum: sell 51% of the company or lose the deal. Of course, Phil and Bowerman stuck to their vision and decided to lose the deal instead of selling their company. Phil and Bowerman saw losing Onitsuka as an opportunity. They decided to create their own shoes instead of depending on others. Needing a new name, Jeff Johnson suggested Nike. Phil wasn't initially sold on it, but they didn't have time to dwell on names. So Nike it was, and the iconic swoosh logo was born. Now, independent, they faced the challenge of finding a manufacturer for their new shoe. Phil inspired the team, emphasizing this was their chance to shine. They named their new line Nike and focused on fixing quality issues. Phil established a network of manufacturers to avoid the same pitfalls as with Onitsuka. But his problems with Onitsuka weren't left in the past. You see, Onitsuka sued Blue Ribbon Sports, and they countersued but eventually settled, which just left Phil with a ton of stress and headache. But in 1971, Blue Ribbon Sports officially became Nike. By 1972, Nike gained exposure at the Olympics, and sales soared to $28 million in 1977. Despite their success, other American brands envied Nike's rise and waited for a chance to challenge them. Things were going well for Nike. Sales were great, and legal issues were sorted. The only hiccup was a cash crunch. Phil reinvested every penny for growth, as he was focused on the long term. That's when a $25 million bill from the U.S. Customs Service hit them. Competitors, fearing Nike's success, lobbied for the enforcement of an old rule called American Selling Price. This meant Nike had to pay extra import fees for not manufacturing in the U.S. Nike fought back, hiring top lawyers and producing a TV commercial. They settled for $9 million, which was a relief considering their significant growth during the legal battle. In 1980, Nike went public, which solved their cash flow issues. Phil's 46% ownership made him insanely wealthy. Early investors saw a huge return. Deals with Chinese factories and expansion into clothing bolstered their success. Celebrity endorsements, especially with Michael Jordan, led to Nike overtaking Converse by 1986. But then in 1991, things took a dark turn. Nike faced allegations of using child labor and poor working conditions. Activist Jeffrey Ballinger exposed the harsh reality in his film Behind the Swoosh. BBC also revealed child labor in a Cambodian factory used by Nike. The backlash led to protests, boycotts, and a 15% drop in Nike's stock. Phil promised improvements, and Nike spent a decade rebuilding its tarnished reputation. Then in 2018, Nike's controversial ad featuring Colin Kaepernick sparked both support and boycotts. Despite initial backlash, the campaign gained attention, resulting in a $6 billion increase in brand value and a 31% boost in sales. This strategy of using controversy wasn't new for Nike, as they had previously used controversial campaigns in 1988 and 1995, addressing ageism and HIV positivity. Nike's experienced marketing team calculated the risks and benefits, using controversy to their advantage and contributing to their overall success. So, using controversy actually paid off for Nike. Between 1988 and 1998, Nike went from selling $800 million to a whopping $9.2 billion after launching their Just Do It campaign. But after 40 years, Phil Knight, the guy who started it all, decided to step down as CEO. His story is pretty amazing. He began as a regular kid with no experience, went to Japan to make his wild idea come true, and ended up creating the biggest sports brand globally, despite the constant ups and downs along the way. Phil's story tells us that you don't have to wait for the perfect time. Sometimes you just need to give your crazy ideas some faith and a chance. Like Nike says, just do it. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, I'd really appreciate if you like and subscribe for more business videos.